flags of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. First item on our agenda today is the consideration of the minutes of the August 22nd, 2022 Village Board meeting. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Second?
Second?
Thank you. Are there any changes? I noticed for 305 Scranton, we had a setback that was 3 feet and side yard that was 3 feet. I thought it was 5 feet and 3 feet. I noticed that tonight.
We'll double check, make sure it's right.
Thank you. Any more changes? Thank you. Clerk, please call the roll.
Trustee Inkman?
Aye.
Trustee Fisher?
Aye.
Trustee Markey?
Aye.
Trustee Ryder?
Aye.
Thank you. Item number 4 is the non-agenda items and visitors. The village president and board of trustees allocate 15 minutes during this item for those individuals who would like the opportunity to address the village board of trustees on any matter not listed on this agenda. Each person addressing the village board of trustees is asked to limit their comments to a maximum of 5 minutes. Do we have anybody online?
No, sir.
Thank you. So I say we move forward. Next is item number 5. The village board sets the order of a meeting. The village president and board of trustees will entertain requests from anyone present on the order of business to be conducted during the village board meeting. I understand we have item 7A and item 12 that will be first.
Without objection.
Without objection? Thank you. Moving on to item 7A. And item 7A is our village administrator's report, and I understand that we have tonight an informational report from the Lake Bluff Yacht Club regarding proposed facility improvements. Mr. Irvin?
I know you wanted to make a statement about.
Yes, and I also am part of the Lake Bluff Yacht Club as a board member, as a sailor, and as a person who moved to this community because of Lake Bluff Yacht Club. So I have to recuse myself from this conversation in this location, and I will move right there.
So, yeah.
On the right side.
So as President Charlot teed up, this is connected to another item that's actually next on tonight, regarding the North Shore Water Reclamation District's project to install a emergency overflow basin at their facilities down at the lakefront. And as part of that project, the yacht club will be temporarily displaced. They have been making plans, working with the village and the North Shore Water Reclamation District, and wanted to update you all on that progress and share some information about the club, as well as where they're at with their design process. And so tonight we would have Gretchen Seymour and John Palazza. John is the current Commodore of the Yacht Club. And you will introduce your team and others.
Good evening. Drew, could you pull up the first slide? Thank you. My name is John Palazza. I'm Commodore this year. I've been Commodore in the past as well. I've been a Lake Bluff resident for a total of 19 years. In the 1990s, my wife and I decided that this was a great community to build a house on, and we built a house on West Washington, and we lived there for 10 years until my career unfortunately took me away for 13 years. But when it was time to retire in 2013, this is the place. Lake Bluff is where I decided I wanted to retire to. I wanted to come back to this community. So since 2013, I've been here ever since, and you're probably not going to get rid of me. So I'm going to turn it over now and let Gretchen introduce herself.
Sure. Hi, I'm Gretchen Seymour. I'm a almost 25-year resident of Lake Bluff with my husband, Jim, And we've had a couple houses in Lake Bluff, raised our family here, and just happy to be here tonight.
I'm Scott Chapey. I've been a member of the Yacht Club since 2005, and I'm a professor of physics at Lake Forest College, and I'm a resident of Lake Forest, but I have been very fortunate to have this club so handy to me and enjoyed sailing against Gretchen and John for many years.
So both Gretchen and Scott are former Commodores and much better sailors than I am. Okay. So if you would bring up the next slide, if you would. Just a little bit about who we are, and Gretchen will get into pretty much what we do. But the club has been an active member of the Lake Bluff community for over 60 years. It was founded in 1961, and the compound was built in 1963. And it's an organization that's open to anyone who has an interest in boating. I often find myself wishing that we hadn't put yacht in the club's name because it conjures up images of people in stuffy old men in white hats and blue blazers, and I assure you that's not who we are. If you come down on a Sunday and you see the members using the compound, the people going out sailing, it's T-shirts and swimsuits on little sunfish, as you can see. What we really have tried to accomplish more than anything else is to provide low-cost access to boating for people on Lake Michigan. That is something that is very, very hard to find up and down the North Shore and in the city of Chicago. Our yearly dues for a member family are $170 a year. And we had to raise them this year because we were looking at construction costs going into this particular project. If you want to store a boat for a season, that costs you an extra $175. I assure you, you cannot go to any community on the North Shore of Chicago and store and use a lakefront for what we provide to Lake Bluff. And it's in our members. So my last point here really is that I want to emphasize that the membership of this club is overwhelmingly Lake Bluff residents. 132 of our 165 families are Lake Bluff residents. And surprisingly, we have many, many members that are no longer active sailors, but they've been members of this community for years and years and years. So it's something that is a tradition for many people in Lake Bluff, and we're very happy to provide a club for those people. So with that, I'll turn it over to Gretchen and talk a little bit.
I think you have one more.
What's that?
I think you have one more about sailing. One more slide.
One more? Oh,
Yeah. If that's all right.
okay, all right, I'm getting ahead of myself. So the club was founded by racers, and their sailboats that we sail, for the most part, are Sunfish. Sunfish is a 14-foot boat you can put two people on it, but it's a crowd. And our mission is to be a world-class Sunfish sailing club. And you know, I think we do a pretty good job on that. We're one of the premier one design sailing clubs in the Chicago area. We have one of our members, Rich Chapman, is just now stepping down as president of the International Sunfish Class Association. And by the way, the Sunfish is the world's most popular sailboat with over 450,000 boats in existence. And we regularly host what I would call big name regattas, including in, I think it was 2018, the Sunfish North Americans, which was also a qualifier for the Pan Am Games, because Sunfish is sailed in the Pan Am Games. The national governing body for sailing, which is U.S. Sailing, had us host the Championship of Champions in 2016, where we brought in 19 of the best sailors, champions of their particular class, and they all sailed here at Lake Bluff in conditions that I refer to as sailing stripped down to its essentials. And we gave them Midwestern hospitality, and it was a great event. And in 2 weeks, coming down the railroad tracks at us, we're hosting the Women's Sunfish North American Championships, and we have 26 sailors from all over the country coming into town for that. So now I'm going to turn it over to Gretchen.
Thanks, John. So next slide, please. Yeah. So you just heard about the depth of our racing, and as John said, that is our mission, and what is our mission statement. But clearly, out of 165 member families, they're not all racing, right? They're not all down there on Sunday afternoons. So who makes up the rest of our group? There's plenty of members who aren't racing, and maybe they own a sunfish and just like to go out on an afternoon with their grandchildren or spouse. Maybe there are people who don't even own a sunfish and use our club-owned sunfish for recreation. As you can see, we also have about 60 each kayaks and stand-up paddle boards that are stored. And really the common theme is across the group is our love of the lake, our love of our special beachfront, and just the desire to be able to access it in a different way from being out on the lake. Next slide, please. Sailing education is an important part of what we do. There are lots of things that you can learn from YouTube, you know, how to set your watch, how to fix your coffee maker. You probably don't want to learn how to sail from YouTube, right? There's a reason that programs exist in a formal way to teach sailing from a safety standpoint and just the practicality of it. With youth sailing, we're really proud of our long relationship with the Lake Bluff Park District in supporting their programs. I'm sure you're familiar, they have youth learn to sail camps every summer that are very competitive to get into because the moms and dads are like on their computer, you know, right when it launches to be able to get them in. They're very popular. So the Park District uses our 14 club-owned sunfish for that program, which may be like, great, let them use your sunfish. The reality is there is wear and tear on any kind of boat in any kind of situation, and you add the use that these get with kids, and there's a lot of wear and tear and a lot of maintenance. And the club, we take care of that. We take care of all the repairs. Our members donate their time to make those repairs and make sure those boats are safe for the kids. In terms of adult learn to sail, we started about 4 years ago, I believe, an adult learn to sail program in the summer. And again, very successful, very accessible, low cost opportunity for people to, again, get out on the lake in a different way. Our instructors, Doug Warren is one of our instructors, he's here tonight. They give their time to become U.S. Sailing certified instructors, so it's a very strong course and reputable, and those instructors, again, are donating their time over the summer for that program. Next slide, please. Finally, we have some fun. We actually have a lot of fun. And a lot of our members, not a lot, a good number of our members are purely social members. Maybe they used to sail, maybe they sailed in a different place, but a lot of them really just love the lake and love the beachfront and love the camaraderie of the sailors and want to be a part of that. We do have a full social calendar. The highlights are the lobster boil, which is coming up in a couple weeks, brunch on the Bluff over 4th of July weekend, Both of these, all of our events really are super family-oriented. You get to see people's kids and grandkids and new spouses throughout the years. One new event this year is the bottom picture, all the kids on that sunfish. And we were really excited about this. It was a family, it was intended to be a camp out. It became a sleep under because of the weather. But, and we're excited because younger families, younger members came to us and said, you know, we'd really love to do something for the families of the yacht club with younger kids. And they came up with this great idea. They had nautical-themed games. Commodore Palizza was teaching them how to tie knots. And I just think it demonstrates that the club is still relevant, and we're listening to our younger members. All right, I'm going to turn it back to John.
Okay. I'm going to wrap up here first by starting to say that, you know, I would rather that we not have to go through this. My life would be a lot simpler if we just weren't doing this project at all. But such as it is, because we have to do it, it really is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. It's been 60 years, this compound has served us well, but frankly, you know, it's not the nicest looking compound in the world. And we call it a compound, and we want to switch to calling it a club structure, and we went through a design process, and we talked to our members about their needs, about their wants, about the aesthetics. We knew that we had to maintain the footprint that we were on. We're not trying to make a land grab here, but maintaining that footprint is actually very important if we want to continue to provide the same amount of storage to our membership, because we've gone through a lot of gyrations, and we've hired an architect, Brian Bertola is here from Midwest Architecture Studios, to jam everything back in and also improve some of the functionality that we have. So because we are a low-cost provider for boat storage, there is a waiting list for the use of our facilities, and what we didn't want to do when we went into this design is come out and say to some people, well, we know you waited for a year to get a slot, but now it's going to go away. So we are trying to maintain the same amount of storage for boats, kayaks, and actually increase the paddle boards, because they're a new and increasingly used item by families. So some of the things that we've tried to do is to provide better functionality for our storage, better functionality for our safety equipment, better functionality. We've built in a small office where we can store our safety radios so we can charge them every week. We're not reliant upon somebody coming down to the beach every Sunday. So sometimes the beach staff get sick and don't show up, like they did it 2 weeks ago. We've got a couple of small changing rooms in there. I assure you that changing out of a wetsuit in October in the back of that compound is not fun. So I have a vested interest in that. And at the end of the day, really, what we wanted to do was make something that we thought would be a better asset for the village and a better asset for our club. Because I will tell you, I have spoken at the U.S. Sailing Leadership Forum about small community-based sailing organizations. They are an endangered species. I used to belong to the Winnetka Yacht Club, and that's out of business. Other clubs around the country are struggling. We are very successful because we're low cost, because we're community-based, and because, you know, we just work at it all the time. So we want to continue to work at it by improving our particular facility. And with that, Scott, anything you want to add here?
No, I think able to help answer any questions.
Okay. All right. We also have Brian Bertola here in case anybody has questions about the current proposed design that we've got.
Can you talk to us about the timeline?
Well, some of that's dependent upon when things get turned over to us when the storage basin is completed. It's not a terribly complicated structure to complete, but I might toss that over to Brian and say, Brian, do you have any idea how long construction might take?
It's probably too soon to know that exactly, but I don't know, some of the components are kit components, so that can be very quickly, and there's not a lot of like physical structure, so it could be done, in a few months probably.
Let's say 3 to 6 months. I never believe positive estimates, but, and some of that depends on when it gets turned over to us. If it gets turned over to us in December, the timeline expands, obviously. But if once we can get in there and work on it, 3 to 6 months. And believe me, our members are chomping at the bit to get back because they won't have access to the lake until we get things done. So we'll get a lot of pressure to get things done quickly.
I'd just like to suggest that they will have access to the lake like everyone else does. So they
Well-
will still have access to the lake.
They won't have access to boats in all probability.
Unless they bring them down the way kayaks are brought down by others.
Yeah, I'm getting dual answers on that from the Park District. So that's a
For next
conversation.
year, do you mean for next year?
For next
Or-
year,
Oh, yeah,
yeah.
next year, we're all going to be hampered.
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask a couple of questions, and I think it would be helpful if we had the map, current, like the Google map of the footprint up. This is so much better, this design. I mean, and I appreciate that it's no longer shown in white. I don't know that you ever thought you were going to have it in white. So it's nice to have it in this earth tones, and it just conceptually nice to look at that way. Can Glenn bring?
He's bringing it up right now.
Okay.
And just to remind everyone that just as the North Shore Water Reclamation District and the village went through the RIO process, will be the next item that you all will consider, the yacht club will still have to go through that process along with the village when they're ready to go. And they do not have unlimited resources, so they have had to wait until the NSWRD was done with their planning process to then start really, I guess, their earnest attempts to design this, so. So do you have, Glenn, can you bring this like even up on like just Google satellite
Google
maps?
Yeah.
So the idea of this is still, I think, a conceptual stage, more or less. And there's still conversations. I know the early direction from the village board was no second story unless it's on the far west side, and you guys were still looking different ways to achieve that. And also, was there a way to even push the facility further west? And I know you looked at that as well.
Okay, so I do, when Glenn is able to bring it up, this piece of property, 200 feet, right, it's not yellow, 200 feet of this particular piece of property it belongs to the village. It needed to be transferred to the village or part village land because the need to accommodate the NSWRD. And one thing that we've been able to accomplish with the NSWRD that you may or may not have heard about is that they are now pushing that generator back at some cost, pushing that generator back, and they will now no longer, could you go to top down? I want to see the footprint. So I'd like to see it straight, yeah, thank you. So they are no longer going to have that unsightly generator out front the way it is. It is going, the easternmost facade of the NSWRD building is going to be this oldest structure, that structure that is right there when you come down the driveway. So when you look at that, it then becomes, to me, much more noticeable how far out the footprint of the current yacht club goes. And we are custodians of this land on behalf of the people of Lake Bluff. And so I feel like it's incumbent upon us to minimize the amount of intrusion into the public space. And I know that you aren't looking for more space, but neither was, NSWRD it was able to revise its plans and push its plans back. I appreciate they're in a different location. They're not, butted up against the bluff the way that you are. They don't have that issue, but I'm just wondering the extent to which you have looked and looked again at getting us 10 feet back even, or 12 feet back, and expanding the width perhaps in order to cede that land back to the people to whom it belongs, which is all of the Lake Bluff citizens. And as a purely technical matter, Lake Bluff specifically, but used by the Park District, obviously. I have another couple of questions, but I wanted to just ask that question as to how much you have tried to find a way to push this back, expand the width, do something different to cede that land back to the people to whom it belongs.
Well, I can sort of address that first. Well, one of the complications is we want to try to maintain what we already have in terms of storage space.
You were getting some additional paddleboard space too, yeah.
Well, basically just by being more efficient in our storage methods.
Right.
We're storing the paddleboards on end instead of lengthwise.
Which makes sense, yeah.
So our paddleboard density is going up. But the other complication is, even with the same footprint, we're actually losing usable space inside the compound because we have to maintain access to certain ports into the basin. So there are certain areas that we can't use for storage. And it's not insignificant, it's several boats worth of storage. So even with maintaining the footprint.
Is that these round
Yes.
circles toward the bluff?
Right. And so we're losing some there, but with Brian's firm's help, we've been able to really fit everything that we need in there. If we were to move back, 10, 12 feet, that's an enormous piece of our area. That's a significant patch. So
And there's no way to make it wider? Is that your understanding? It can't be wider either?
If you see the X's, those are storage units.
Yeah,
And Sunfish is 14 feet wide, or long, rather. And that's right. I can do without it, Drew.
Here we go.
Brian's got
Okay,
it.
all right.
You just push the red button.
All right, the red button, okay.
There you go.
Okay, all right, there it is. But each one of these is a storage unit that holds 2 Sunfish side by side and then 3 kayaks on the upper 2 levels side by side. If you look at if you go back to the other slide, you're asking, can we go any farther south towards the shelter? I looked at that survey this afternoon, as a matter of fact. There's roughly, and I was doing this I didn't have the survey to scale, but there's maybe 25 feet there,
what
and
it
there's a
looks like.
15-foot setback on the village, is what Drew tells me. So you only pick up 10 feet, and you pick it up in the wrong direction. So we can't get another whole Sunfish row in there by doing that. If we could, we would. We looked at rotating the compound 90 degrees. That makes it worse. So, yeah, believe me, we struggle with this issue. We're trying to, I think we're being as efficient as we can. And I appreciate your concern about that sight line, but nobody has complained to me about sightlines. Maybe you have constituents that have.
No, but much as you said, you're taking this opportunity to make things better, that's our job,
Right,
right?
right.
And that's how we got that generator pushed back, to
Right.
make that much better.
Yeah. No, I agree this is a much better outlook for the lakefront.
Far better, and so, I think that's why I'm pushing on this issue.
Okay, short of going vertical, which is a whole different hot button, I don't know how we can do it.
Well, I see it's the 10-foot or almost 11-foot paddle boards are diagrammed somewhere as sticking up.
Yes.
And that's possible with paddle boards, of course, but I take it not possible with sunfish or,
We had looked at certain storage options. I believe the Naval Academy has laser sailboats that are 14 feet long that they store vertically, but I think you're dealing with a different class of person when they, a sunfish weighs between 125 and 135 pounds, and we don't want 14-year-olds trying to wrestle that vertically.
yeah, I can understand that.
Yeah.
My one other question is, when you say that there's 132 families who are members, or I think there's roughly calculated to 33 non-members, or non-Lake Bluff residents, I take it that's outside of Knollwood as well, so it's non-Park District residents.
I don't know anybody from Knollwood in the club, do you?
I'm not sure.
Okay,
No, but it would, I'm confident saying 95% of our members are, within the surrounding communities. We have a few that come in from Chicago, Leland's up in Winthrop Harbor, but he used to be a resident, so I think he gets credit. So a few people like that, but it's overwhelmingly Lake Bluff residents.
yeah, well, it seems like it. I'm wondering the extent to which, it's not my business, but whether they pay the same dues as everyone else, because of course we're subsidizing this. It's not in any monetary form, but we're divesting the rest of the community of the use of this land. And in part, that's to benefit other Lake Bluff residents, right?
Yes, we've been a free rider for 60 years, I freely admit. But, we do give back to the community.
Oh, I know. I think everybody wants this to work out, but I just want to be sure when I vote on this ROI or RIO that you have done everything you can to minimize the footprint and not just assume that because it's been there for 60 years, it ought to stay.
Right, I understand. That's,
Any other comments, questions?
I just had a comment. When you look at the Bluff, there's the established NSWRD building that's kind of the big yellow brick building that looks, dated from the 60s or 70s. Then there's the Park District's shelter, which has big, nice boulders and kind of looks park-like structure. And then there's the yacht club, which, whatever we do is going to be an improvement over what's there. But there's the thought, when I just look at the pictures, that it looks very modern and futuristic and very nice. And I almost wonder, if we just need to take a little bit more, a wider view of 1, 2, and 3 and blend them. And I like the idea of perhaps using greenery to such a large extent that the building is quite minimized if we had, the big beach grasses or whatever it is that is going to be native and thrive down there. I know you don't want to dedicate a lot of space to something like that, but I also think that when I look at these 3 buildings in a row, they just could not look any more different. And I don't know if there's even just like a nod to the big boulders or something that can be done. We don't want more big yellow bricks, but just something that would make it look a little bit more like it really all kind of goes together. And my other concern was just with the timing. I know that you guys are, in the middle of some iterations and trying to figure out funding. And so the final version of whatever it is doesn't exist yet, and you'll continue to move toward that goal. But I don't know how that works in tandem with the other project, which is the big, million gallons and, lots more brick and big things that are happening. And how much time does that leave you before you're pigeonholed into you get this much money or you have that much space? And it seems like the timing is everything and the coordination is everything. And I don't know what the answer is, but I'm when I listen to all these moving pieces, I'm getting very nervous already that you've got this longer term vision, which is great, but because you don't have in hand, this is exactly what it's gonna look like and how it's gonna fit and all that, then other stuff gets built and done and promised, and then that's what you get is whatever's left. And so I don't know what the answer is, but I feel a sense of things need to be made a little bit more permanent, just so you get what you really need, that you can articulate well how it's all gonna work together. We all want it to succeed for all the village residents and for you as well. And I don't know how you can make that happen sooner than later, but it seems like a real pressing issue.
Well, just a short response to that is, we, of course, are going to try and blend in with whatever winds up being the final product from the North Shore Water Reclamation District. Now, the structure itself will be sort of rectangular on the facade, probably, but it will be clad, and whatever we choose to clad it with, we intend to try and make it blend with other structures. In terms of greenery, now I'm between a rock and a hard place. If we put a lot of greenery out in front,
Understood.
we cut down the sight lines.
Right.
So Drew at one point suggested ivy, so we could, have the,
It's visually
be sort of
pleasing.
like Wrigley Field.
Yeah.
But we are committed to being an integral part of the beach and looking like we belong there. It would be real nice to have a fancy, 3-story building like Southern Yacht Club, but it's not going to happen.
No,
Yes. And we recognize that.
yeah.
Okay.
I just had a couple of things. First of all, I really like the design, and I'm not as concerned about how far it comes out east. I think that this is something that people in Lake Bluff utilize. I think it's used for educational purposes. I think it adds a lot of value to the community. So I'm not as concerned about that portion. I do think the color and the color scheme, what have you, can blend a little bit more. I agree with Barbara that the color scheme, which clearly we've just talked about, I wasn't sure if all around the side there were logos on the drawing makes it look like there's logos kind of running all around the perimeter of the walls.
But
I
you
don't
can
know
blame
if
the
I'm
architect for that.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
It's a suggestion like you see on tennis courts or at the high school when they have the windbreak and they have the logo on there. It's a way to do a secure enclosure, not have it look like a chain link fence.
Okay, okay.
But we could have, ivy growing on that or whatever.
Again, I think that's for down the road,
Yeah.
but I agree with Barbara, I'd love to be able to see a little more continuity between the buildings. I like the fact that you were able to fit more paddle boards in. I hear that from people all the time, that they would like to have more space down there. It looks a little more secure than what's down there now, so, and I know that's probably.
Let's not go down that rabbit hole.
Right, I know that's something that is probably important to you all. So I did have a couple of questions. When you're doing construction, how will materials be transported? Are you gonna use the road? Are you gonna come down the road, down onto the beach? Will there be like heavy machinery down there, and how will that?
I mean, from our
Okay,
So it's a very basic method of construction. It's gonna be nothing compared to what North Shore
is,
used to do.
okay, okay. And then I did have one other question about when, so this building's going to be taken down, the current one, and then waiting for the new one. Where will people store their, where will you store your like, where are those things going to go? They aren't going to be sitting on the beach, right?
Where do you want me to take it? No,
Well,
yeah.
well, the club boats, we've gotten an agreement with the village to store those for us. And we've put out a call to the members saying, please come and get your boats before the end of September.
Okay,
Mine will live pulled up in my garage and pulled up to the rafters in there. And I think Regis has found some storage, local storage that people can rent as well for their boats.
okay,
And we have already set up sort of a bucket brigade to help members
Yeah.
move their boats if they don't have a trailer.
It's in process. We have a board meeting on Wednesday night where that's probably issue number one. We're getting a number of emails right now, people saying, I don't have a trailer, how do I get my boat out? I need a key to the top of the gate at the top of the bluff. We will have days organized by the end of the month where people can get their boat moved on a trailer by us.
okay.
But they're gonna have to find their own storage. We're not in the storage business.
It's not right now. Thank you.
Okay.
All right, I think if that's, unless there's any comments from anybody in the audience or online, I think that will conclude my report.
I have one other
Yes, ma'am.
comment. And just another consideration, I appreciate that there may be reasons why this won't work, but again, to the point that this is land that belongs to the people. The changing rooms are only accessible from inside. I wonder if you've given any consideration to allowing those to be accessible from the outside and then more generally available.
We have not given that any consideration, because that brings a whole new host of problems.
Maybe insurance problems, I suppose, but
I think insurance would be one of them. Just control, cleanliness, kids going in there and locking the doors and doing whatever. I don't want to go there. I can control it if I have people going through the gates.
I understand.
Okay.
I understand that there's reasons, but you can understand my thought process on this as
Yes.
well.
Well, but we haven't excluded anybody. If your check clears on our club, you're in. To my knowledge, in 60 years, we have never excluded a member from joining. And to my knowledge, based upon conversations with old timers at the Lantern, we have only excluded one person over the years, and that was for bad sportsmanship. So if people see this facility, they want to join, we have a membership limit right now of 200, but we're happy to accommodate them if they think we offer facilities that will benefit them.
Thanks.
Thank you for your time. Thank you for your questions. I'm sure we'll be going through this in more detail. And as you can appreciate, as members of the village board, we're in the process now where everybody's a critic. And I'm sure you get that all the time, and that's where we are right now. Thank you very much.
Josh, you have a question or comment?
Yeah, I don't.
Sure, please, if you would.
I'll make a quick comment. I appreciate it. Sorry, guys. I came in a little late. I was at the kindergarten ice cream social. So all I want to say was just on behalf of myself, I won't speak for the yacht club per se, but in the village, I think that the having yacht club is a institutional term. So sometimes I think people think of that and think of things as like kind of stuffy, but it's just more of an institutional term. This is a very welcoming useful club to use, way to use the lake is what I want to say, because paddle boards are fantastic, canoes are fantastic, sailboats are fantastic,
And ultimately, as someone who moved here 4 years ago and is connected to a lot of new people who have moved here through the Newcomers Club, it is an awesome way to get people to use the beach when they have a kayak down there, a place to store their kayak, because if you have a kayak, you're scared to death of having to lug it all the way down there. And I just think having a storage unit that's a part of the yacht club is just, it's so positive for the community, and it gets people using our beach, which I think is the best resource. And I mean, there's lots of awesome resources, but that's like the best resource of this whole town. So, okay, so I just want to speak on the new families moving in and how great that facility is and how important it is. So that's all I wanted to add. Thanks.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. I would like to add also that Lake Bluff is a beach community. We were created as a beach community, and therefore these conversations are important because they are a lifetime commitment to our community, to the beach, and to the environment we have created since the past 127 years. So thank you. Next item is item 12, an ordinance amending the an ordinance granting Rio development plan and site plan approval for a sanitary sewer pumping station at 503 Sunrise Beach. Is there a motion to approve this ordinance?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
Thank you. The NSWRD and the village are jointly applying to authorize the construct a 1 million gallon detention basin for sanitary sewage at NSWRD facility, also named the pumping station, located upon a village-owned parcel that forms part of Sunrise Beach at the toe of a Lake Bluff along Lake Michigan. The detention basin will prevent sanitary sewage from overflowing into Lake Michigan in the event of an emergency, which has happened at least 10 times in the last 20 years. And I was there once, and it was horrible. The basin will also allow NSWRD to perform additional planned maintenance. Under the village Rio recreational, institutional, and open space zoning rules, this work is subject to a Rio development plan. This is essentially a Rio-specific planned development tool, similar to the village's planned residential, commercial, and mixed-use development tools. Under this process, the PCZBA and the ABR are engaged in a coordinated review of a proposal, the Rio development plan, and the village board may now act jointly on both recommendations in the form of a single unified ordinance. The PCZBA conducted its review on Wednesday, August 31st, and unanimously recommended approval. The ABR conducted its review on Tuesday, September 6th, and unanimously recommended approval. Both approvals were subject to a number of conditions, which are listed on the following page of this ordinance. Certain of these conditions have been incorporated into the draft approval ordinance attached. The remainder will be addressed in revised plans to be submitted by NSWRD prior to second reading and approval by the ordinance. Do we have comments on the board?
A couple of comments that I made their way into the revised ordinance, and so I appreciate that. Drew, I have, I guess, a few questions, but not, I guess, a comment.
Go ahead.
Okay. So nowhere in the Rio does it, development plan, which is well done, but nowhere does it assure us that this detention basin will only be used in instances of emergency or planned outage. certainly said that that's the intent, but if it became cheaper for them to store sewage there rather than pump it out, I would like some assurance that that can't be done. We can't just treat this as kind of a temporary storage. It's got to just go as soon as it comes back online. So there's nothing in the ordinance that says that, and maybe that's not where it belongs, but somewhere in the Rio plan, we need some assurance that that doesn't become a storage basin at some point down the road. And further, I guess, when it is used, some assurance that it will be cleaned. So I guess this is a statement, not a question. And the question I guess I have is we've had problems with the odor. Again, this is, an opportunity for us to make things better. Is there any way that this project can make the odor problem better? Or at least not worsen it? And I guess I'd like a couple comments on that. So one comment, it can't become a storage basin. I don't care if the world turns upside down. It's never going to be a storage basin. It's temporary usage for emergencies or planned outages or unplanned outages. And two, when it's done being used, it will be subject to some cleaning process. And then that it won't increase the odor, and indeed that they've done what they can to use this project to better the repeated problem with the odor.
Thank you. We have NSWRD Representative Tom Swarthout. Do you mind addressing those questions?
Good evening. I'm happy to address those questions. Thank you, Mr. President. We're hopeful to be able to move this forward quickly. We have a hearing on Wednesday where the full trustees will vote to move this forward. We will be going out to bid the following week, and we will then vote on those responses the following month. So by mid-October, we will be underway with your approval. My response to the question, and I think it's a great question, no, there is no intention to store at a short time or even within a day. Our facility in Lake Forest, which I'm very familiar with, has never stored any sewage in there until the following day when we were able to pump that sewer out. There's no benefit for us to do that, and it certainly is. You can put that in the ordinance. I'm not a civil engineer, but I know that's not the intent. They do clean the facility after it's utilized, when it's rarely utilized, but nevertheless they do. So I hope that answers your question. I do just before I forget, our former mayor, not the current mayor, our former mayor was a gold medal winner in the small boats that you're speaking of, not the sunfishes, but the ones that. So Rob Lansing, terrific guy, won a gold medal probably 100 years ago. But
Thank you.
and we are addressing the odor issue is brought up often. We have our maintenance people down there twice a week, once a month. I know that they monitor it. We're trying to solve that issue. I hope they don't. That this isn't connected, but we certainly have heard you, and I'm the one who really pushed the whole project forward, not just the tank, but the aesthetics of the project. You're right, I'm an aesthetic guy. The Park District's facility, the future facility that the Yacht Club is proposing, and ours, we would love to have them all be consistent. There's no question.
Trustee, just to clarify, Trustee Swarthout, my understanding from speaking with your engineer, Steve Waters, he mentioned to me that, I think maybe this helps answer Trustee Ryder's question, is that the existing odor control facility was designed and specified to handle the reservoir.
Correct.
It was built with that in mind. So the idea that they would not be challenged by this additional odor control requirements by this new facility was in fact designed to accommodate it at this size.
Yeah, when that facility was built, maybe almost 10 years ago, the odor control facility, there was a different technology they used. It was more of a chemical way that they treated the sewage. And this is a newer, unfortunately not as successful as I know everybody in the room wants. But the intent was to build that facility at the same time, and it never came to fruition for whatever reason, 12, 14 years ago. And they were supposed to be connected, and now we hope to do that. And I would ask, as a former city council member, I don't know if it's possible to waive first reading and grant final approval. I don't know if they do that up here in Lake Bluff or not.
That has happened from time to time. That's up to the board to decide if they would do that. I don't think they were prepared to do that tonight, and usually that type of request is made in advance.
Oh, okay. Okay, well, I'll sit down.
This worked out. I have one more question for you. Quite a few people in the community have been very attached to odor monitoring and control, and I thank George Russell for that. Along that work that will be done with the basin, are you going to update the odor remediation? Because I know that original machinery was installed in 1977, I think. Is that part of your plan?
Could you repeat the question?
The original equipment to treat odors is, I think, 45 years by now. Is that a part of your plan to?
Well, that's not my understanding, Mr. President. It was my understanding that the carbon that's being used is fairly new.
Yes.
That technology is fairly new. So we want to address the odor issue. There's no question about it. I know it's conflicted. Some of the staff at the district claim that they don't have that same response when they're down there, though I know that the perception is different within the room. What's that, buddy?
What I'm attached to is same or better, as in we have done a lot of progress. I remember moving to Lake Bluff in 1996, and it was not smelling good. And up to last year, until George got attached to really document what is happening at the beach, it was not smelling good. And you guys have done a lot of good progress. And I would hate going backward, because this is the winds, the prevailing winds can be very, very hateful to Lake Bluff.
I get it. We're going to address that. We have. Are you the odor guy? Come on in.
What I understand from the odor control is it has to have a carbon filter in it. The carbon filter suppliers have come and checked it. After they've filled it, it's settled. They were going to add some more to top the thing back up again, and they did find that it wasn't functioning at a 100%, but they can remedy this with a refill and continue to monitor it. So that was the answer that I wanted to share with you.
Thank you.
I just had a quick question about just the size of the project. It's 1 million gallons in this overflow tank, and how was that determined to be the right size? And how do we anticipate overflows being utilized? I mean, will this be something that in 10 years we'll have to make it twice as big, or how was that size issue addressed?
I certainly don't anticipate that. It's half the size of the facility in Lake Forest, but it has half the volume. We think that the storage, I think Steve Waters, who's our authority in the PE up at the district, this could handle 2 days of flows without any power. So I think we're pretty comfortable that within 2 days we'll be able to replace or at least have a supplemental generator down there to, if in fact that's the need. If there's a failure, a massive failure, then we'd be able to rectify that.
So a 2-day failure has not happened historically?
It's never happened. We've never had a loss of multiple days at the Lake Forest facility. We've had a number of needs for it over the last even year, especially with some of the rainfall that we've had of late. That's really the major reason we've had these issues.
Thank you.
And by the way, it's all, it's 3 feet below the sand. If there was no yacht club issues, this would be seamless. You would know that facility was built 24 months from now.
Do we have more questions on the board?
I feel like I ask you about odor every time you walk in the building, so I think we've covered the ground.
You're not the only woman that asks that. My wife asks that quite often.
Every time you
Long day, you know.
Yeah, it was
She's not watching, I'm sure. So, if it's a perception, it's reality. I get it. You know, it just needs to be
I mean,
addressed.
it's not a perception. It's I myself have definitely had to leave the beach before.
That's crazy.
You know,
That's
so
just not acceptable.
Yeah.
Just not
Yeah.
acceptable. And I know everybody in the room really appreciates, but we're not going to put down asphalt. We're going to have a plaza that we want to be able to have used for the yacht club, for the association of village managers to be able to have functions down there with 150 people that are overpaid. I don't.
well, not ours, not us, but
No, I know you weren't.
We're looking for a stand-up comedian at the moment for those types of events.
Thank you, Tom.
thanks, Tom.
Do we have more questions online?
If there's anybody participating in this Zoom meeting and virtually, please raise your hand and you can be recognized with if you have any comments or questions. No one seems to be raising their hand.
Thank you very much. Seeing that we have no more questions to address, this is a roll call. Clerk, please
Is
call
there a
the roll.
motion?
There is a motion.
Okay.
It's a first reading, so
Yeah.
Okay, I literally couldn't remember.
No, and I, if I, just to be clear, my understanding of the motion, which was made by trustee Markey and seconded by trustee Ankerman, includes, I guess the question is to include the amendment that was suggested by trustee Ryder to have clarity about this being a temporary.
I think adding clarity would be advisable.
And the other things that were listed on the.
Yes, as handed out earlier tonight. Yeah.
And so this is a first reading, so it's a voice call. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? So the motion carries. Thank
So
you.
now I think there is a request, if the board would entertain,
Oh, when's your next hearing?
2 weeks from tonight, 2 weeks from this evening.
That's fine.
Okay.
You guys can,
Yeah.
if you require me to come back, I'll see you in 2 weeks.
Tom, thank you very much. NSWRD, thank you very much. And we're now resuming the order of the meeting.
Yeah, if they want to, yeah.
Next is our village finance report. Item 6A, the warrant report for August 23rd to September 12th, 2022. Is there a motion to approve the warrant report?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Thank you. As a summary of background and reason for request, this is for expenditure of village funds for payment of invoices in the amount of $530,314.86 for August 23rd to September 12th, 2022. Again, for total expenditures of $530,314.86. You will find reports and document attached as the warrant report for August 23rd to September 12th, 2022, to the amount of $530,314.86, dated 8/23 to 9/12/2022. The invoice register report shows checks with a status of open or paid. All checks with a status of open are computer-generated checks for the board's final approval. Checks with the status of paid are manual checks processed. Questions from the board? So I see no questions. This is a roll call. Clerk, please call the roll.
Trustee Fisher?
Aye.
Trustee Markey?
Aye.
Trustee Ryder?
Aye.
Trustee Inkman?
Aye.
Next is item 6B, that is a discussion regarding Finance Committee's recommendation to fund stormwater infrastructure or establishment of a stormwater utility. As a background, during the past year, the Village Finance Committee has explored alternative revenue sources to fund existing and new stormwater infrastructure needs. The Finance Committee, at its August 22nd, 2022 meeting, after evaluating proposed flood reduction projects as well as infrastructure maintenance costs with Village Stormwater Consulting Engineers, Christopher B. Burke Engineering, recommended the Village Board consider implementing a stormwater utility to improve both the capacity and condition of village infrastructure. Attached is a presentation that provides background information, budgetary needs, implementation methodology, and possible next steps related to the possible creation of a stormwater utility.
Yeah, and we put together this presentation with the goal of using that with the presumption at some point the board would want to have community engagement, and we put it together for that purpose. Certainly don't have to go through it all tonight. Many of you have seen almost all of it, but I can, if you would like, I can go through quickly. Glenn, would you start? The presentation itself contains information regarding the recent storm events and local flooding. It also includes the stormwater projects that have been talked about, both existing and a number of new projects that have been identified by the village's investment in the modeling. We talk about the various revenue sources that the village, why don't we just go to that slide, Glenn, if you would please, the various revenue sources, potential, well, yeah, keep going, that the Finance Committee discussed. I think originally the Village Finance Committee started talking about, after I think there was a consensus that there was a need to fund stormwater improvements, and looked at the various means, and if you would go to the next slide, looked at maybe even doing both a real estate transfer tax and stormwater utility, but settled on the stormwater utility for the reasons listed here in terms of neutrality, certainty, convenience, and fairness. Go to the next slide, please. It's very common to have a stormwater utility, and it's very common to use the exact same methodology that the village is Finance Committee has been discussing. Next slide, please. The methodology really puts properties in their zoning district buckets and the way they are regulated with regards to impervious surface and development, which ties to how much coverage there is on the property, and which in terms of impacting stormwater runoff in the community. And obviously, the village has been talking about means to finance these improvements and looked at issuing debt. I think my understanding from the Finance Committee's chair is, but the idea, Trustee Ankerman has been talking about how big a scale of a project should we be talking about here. 10 million has been identified as initially, and understanding that the goal obviously would be to try to find funding from other sources, whether it be federal, state, or county. Frankly, the county has been amazing this last year in stepping up and funding the phase 1 of the deep tunnel project, that viaduct and trunk line project, as well as indicating ability to likely fund phase 2 and maybe even other funding we're talking about. We're on a call with them on Friday. But I know Village President Charlot has been working with our federal legislators and our state legislators and talking about calling another meeting to meet and discuss if there's ways to find funding. Part of it is, I think right now, is a lot of the funding flowing to municipalities don't necessarily are in the same financial situation that the Village of Lake Bluff is in. And also the project, like it or not, it's not on a route that has a super high volume of traffic, and so it's not checking certain boxes. And then the idea that in terms of project readiness, which is something that's important in a lot of grants and funding, is we're in phase 1. We hope to get phase 2 done, probably looking at 3 to 5 years before all that gets done. So, but all this investment now and keeping it in front of our elected officials, it's a weekly, seems like activity, keeping it front and center. Next. Oh, go ahead.
We had an essential insight from Drew last Friday, but I find that very important. One question we get is, how come we don't get those grants after we do phase 1?
This is grants in general.
Grants and of different sources, and we're being told, okay, you guys don't qualify because you rank too low for getting those type of grants, whatever the type of grant is. And my quandary has been for the past 2 years, how come do other communities around us get those grants? Well, they are in the same, they have the same means we have, or better means we have in this community. And the essential insight from Drew this past Friday was they also do phase 2. They also do land acquisition, they do funding, they do other things, they do better plans, they do better planning before going to phase 3. And because they achieve phase 1 and phase 2, they have a much better ranking when it comes down to grants.
Readiness, yeah.
For readiness. And the point I would like to make is, as we consider budgeting and capital expenditures, it would be very, very smart to not stop at phase 1, but also consider phase 2 on our own, so that by the time we apply for money of any kind, we have a much better chance to gather money.
But there is risk with that, right? You know,
Yeah.
to do that you may not get funded for some extended period of time.
Yeah.
So, and what we've talked about is that there may be, looking at each project and which one makes sense to do it and others. I mean, right now, we're at phase 2 with Green Bay Road and the bridge, and we're in line still behind other communities. Some, I'll call them legacy projects that have, when the reshuffling of the funding criteria, they got in front of us, even though we were further along in the planning stages. But we're hopeful that that will be another way for us to maybe rise up, as President Charlotte pointed out, in our grading when we're seeking grants. The slide here is the timeline and what's been accomplished so far by the Finance Committee over the last year, really, leading them up to having this conversation at the most recent meeting and making the recommendation, which is to pursue a stormwater utility. And I think that's the question that's in front of you today in terms of direction. Where do you want to take it? Do you want to keep it at the village board level? Do you want to move it back to the Finance Committee to complete some of these final steps that are outlined here, to include community engagement, scaling the project to more finer details, and moving forward. So, Chair Inkeman, I don't know if you have.
Well, what I wanted to say is that by and large, the Finance Committee meetings have been pretty well attended by other board members. So this isn't news to most everyone, although not everyone is at every meeting, most are. But the attempt to bring it back before the whole board and, the public at these meetings is to say, we've done a lot of work to this point, and we now need to decide our critical next steps. And I do think that, it's outlined here that if we decide to move ahead now instead of waiting for more need to be demonstrated, I think we've kind of realized that the need is there. The time is, well, it would have been great yesterday. And so I just wanted to bring it before the board and see if we have direction then to refer it back to the committee, and we can address things that need to be addressed next, like engaging with the community and deciding how it is we want to scale it. We know that the need is great, and how do we want to start taking bites of the big elephant that's before us. So if there are any questions that people have at this point, this would be a good time to ask them, but certainly giving the Finance Committee direction to continue on this path is what we're really looking for. And if there's pushback, we can kind of talk about what that means and what are other options that we have.
So if I understand correctly, you're basically asking for consensus on this board to move forward with the process, including community feedback and refining this new ability to pay for stormwater infrastructure.
Yes.
So from a board standpoint.
Well, I feel like I'm on the Finance Committee from attending, and I feel like we just had this discussion, and we literally did have a pretty in-depth discussion at your last meeting, which I had the good fortune of attending. So I think my primary focus is, to begin, I feel like the Finance Committee in your hands has been steered valiantly, and I have a great deal of faith in our Finance Committee under your control and your leadership. And really my big focus now is getting to the stage of community engagement and that transparency, because that's crucial. I feel like it can't come soon enough, honestly. So, you know, that's where I'm at. I want the community to be understanding. I mean, Barbara, what you just said was, it would have been good yesterday, literally yesterday with the storm we had yesterday.
Yeah.
This is on everyone's minds. And what I don't want is for us to go too far out without making sure these conversations are expanded to the greater population of the community.
Thank you, Terry. Joy and Susan?
Sure. I mean, I don't think it's any surprise to anyone that I'm not excited about this. I don't think the stormwater utility fee is as popular as it's portrayed. I don't think it's used in as many communities as we've said it has been. I struggle with asking our residents for more money. I understand that this is an issue, we have to deal with it. But I struggle myself doing that, because I just know we ask for a lot, quite frankly. So there's the issue I've always had with, if schools and churches and what have you are going to pay for the utility, then we're essentially paying twice. I think in this presentation, I would like to see the fee methodology updated, because I think we already know those numbers are not realistic. We've already heard that the numbers in there are low. That it's not going to be, what, $109 for, it's that the rate has gone up. So I'm a little uncomfortable with that. I think at one point we talked about putting in a sunset clause, and somehow that just sort of fell by the wayside. And I really, really would like to see and understand a lot better about, I understand how an ERU works. I understand we have a fee methodology that we're working with, but how does that look going forward? How does that get increased? I still feel like the amount of money that we could be spending changes from $5 million to $20 million, depending on what we're talking about doing. And I think out of fairness to our residents, it needs to be a little more structured. We need to be able to say to them, this is what we plan on spending in the next 10 years. This is how we plan on instituting this fee. Do we cap the fee on how much we increase it every year? I think there's a lot of unknowns there. And anytime we're enacting a new fee on our residents, I think we should have really good, solid, straightforward information to give them. I'm interested to see how the community reacts.
Thank you, Joy.
Sure.
Susan?
As to the community rollout, and I appreciate that this deck is in part in anticipation of that, I think it would be helpful if we built out the revenue versus project funding slide, which currently stops with the first 4 tranches of work. I don't know it's the slide right after the colorful map slide.
I think.
Yeah. And maybe that's, I don't know, the 10-year anticipated projects that we might possibly do in the next 10 years. I'm not entirely sure, but I think what one might say is, wait a minute, we get the viaduct and trunk line paid for by the state, as should happen, and then we really don't need the rest. Well, there's 10 more years of projects out there, and they're identified elsewhere in the deck, right? The Lakefront South, the West Terrace, the Oak Terrace, et cetera. I think for reasons, in part, so people know that we're not just focused on these areas. We have plans for all of the areas that are identified on these maps. We ought to build this out. We're not talking about, a utility fee that pays for all of those. That would be multiple millions that we don't have here. But I think it understates what the
Something
vast.
that marries it to the total need.
Yeah.
Which is, of course, a moving target. We understand that, but we also know that that's not the total. And I agree with your point.
Right.
Somehow we need to get the magnitude in there, which it's already a huge magnitude.
I know,
But-
and it is, and it may be limited to what we think we can bite off in the near term, but it doesn't change the fact that these others are going to have to be done. And sunset makes a lot of sense, but that sunset would need to be quite a ways in the future.
Right.
So maybe we could set a sunset that is dependent on when all of these issues are resolved, but it would be so far in the future, I don't know how it would read. But, so that's a couple suggestions on the deck. I think this is meeting a particular need to talk about funding, but I think we get a lot of pushback that the viaduct and trunk line are paid for magically by a third party, and then we really don't need to do this for the rest. But the rest is so vast that we need to start funding it. Even if we get the viaduct and trunk line paid for completely, we have plenty that we need this funding for.
We can take that. Thank you for that comment.
Thank you very much. I also had the chance to talk to Trustee Steve Rappin today, and speaking about this subject, he expressed full support for the current process and for moving forward for what would happen next at the Finance Committee. Okay?
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. So I recognize that we have a consensus minus a few points, more questions to be addressed, such as a sunset, such as
Community input.
community input from Suzanne's standpoint, from what is the extent of a project. So it would be good to flesh this out to provide a tiered approach maybe to it, and maybe more detailed about the extent of that funding to Joyce's input. But I think we can move forward. I think we have a consensus.
Yes, and I do welcome more questions, and if we want to be more specific about ways to answer some of those concerns, I would like to do that at the Finance Committee level. I would welcome that.
I don't know that we have consensus, but I mean, the ball's rolling, so, and that's okay. I don't know that we have to have 100% consensus.
Right.
I'd like to be clear that
Consensus does not mean unanimity.
okay,
Just means majority, just means there's
a majority,
Yeah.
so that's fine.
I would like to say that I understand that I understand the ball is going to roll forward, that you don't agree with everything that is said, but at least we move forward with this process.
Sounds like we're going to do that. I mean,
Okay.
I'm probably not going to like the yacht club design, but it's going to go forward. So you win some, you lose some.
just life.
So the
And you
process-
still got to state your position.
the answer is yes, but the process is essentially imperfect, and let's move forward with it.
That's right. That's right.
So thank you.
Thank you.
And this is it, right? We do not have any votes.
We're at number 8.
We're at number 8. Next is item number 8, our village attorney's report.
No report tonight.
Thank you so much. Followed by item number 9, that is the village president's report, and that would be the appointment of Rosalind Doan to the Historic Preservation Commission. Is there a motion to appoint Mrs. Rosalind Doan to the Historic Preservation Commission?
So moved.
Thank you. A second?
Second?
Thank you. Subject to the consent of the Board of Trustees, the village president appoints members to the village's various advisory boards and commission. Village President Charlot recommends the appointment of Mrs. Rosalind Doan to fill the final vacancy on the Historic Preservation Commission. If approved, Mrs. Doan's term will expire on April 30, 2023. Are there any questions?
It's a voice vote.
It's a voice vote. This is a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. The motion carries, and we will welcome Mrs. Doan on this board, filling the last position. Thank you very much. Next item is item number 10, acceptance of a correspondence. Please note all correspondence was delivered to the Village Board of Trustees in the informational reports on August 19th and 26th and September 2nd, 2022. Any questions? This is a voice vote.
You do.
We need a motion?
We need a motion. Is there a motion to approve this,
To accept the correspondence.
to accept the correspondence?
So moved.
Second.
Second?
Second, you have a second.
Thank you so much. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you very much. The motion carries.
Item 11.
Number 11. Item 11 is an ordinance amending the first year of a biennial budget of the Village of Lake Bluff for the fiscal year beginning May 1st, 2022 and ending April 30, 2023. Is there a motion to approve this ordinance?
So moved.
A second.
Second.
Thank you, Suzanne. To align expenses with amounts noted in the first year of a multi-year budget, staff recommends, following past practice, to revise the first year of the fiscal year 2023 biennial budget in the amount of $323,295 for expenditure rollovers and adjustments. This includes the following expenses: fiscal year 22 rollover cost associated with the purchase of 2 police vehicles. Resolution 2021-51 authorized the original purchases. However, the orders were completed in fiscal year 23. Number 2, a FEMA firefighters grant, EMW-2020-FG-11506, received to fund the purchase of 33 self-contained breathing apparatus in the amount of $220,680.25 was received. This one-time additional revenue offsets the unbudgeted expense. And number 3, last, emergent repair expenses of $15,000 related to water main breaks. We anticipate future amendments related to the rollover costs associated with the PAF repaving project, the East Scranton Avenue streetscape and paving improvement project, and also the Green Bay Road West Washington pedestrian crossing projects. All these projects were budgeted in fiscal year 22 and will be included in a future quarterly budget amendment process. Funds are available to effectuate these expenses modification from sources other than the tax levy. Mrs. Ocano, would you like to tell us more?
I would like first, if I may, just this, we have historically have done these budget amendments at the end of, towards the end of the fiscal year. We had a conversation with the chair of the Finance Committee, Barbara Ankerman, and we said there's no reason why we couldn't do them more frequently, perhaps even quarterly, in a more timely way, so that sometimes we, we from time to time, somebody said, well, what did we do then? When did we do that resolution? So it's just kind of keep it more timely. So, this somewhat is foreshadowing additional ones coming, and we tee those up for you all. So,
I do.
but I didn't steal your thunder.
If anyone has any questions, that's really all I'm here. I don't know
Well,
what further
I
to add to
think
that.
a lot of these end up being, timing differences, things that can't, they're budgeted to happen in one period and
Rollovers,
they can't happen, so that's the rollover. And then others are good things that happen that aren't necessarily, we hope to happen, but we don't know if they will, like these grants. And then finally, the emergencies, those are things that come up that as a village, we have to address these situations. So it makes sense that these are items that, need a little bit of attention in terms of being, budgeting or adjusting the budget to reflect what's actually happened, yeah. No additional questions from me.
Thank you. Any more questions on the board? If not, It is a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Thank you. The ordinance passes. Thank you so much. Number 12.
Done. 13.
We're at number 13. This is for our trustees' report. Do any trustees wish to make a report tonight?
I have a comment. I was recently approached by someone who was wondering about the status of the historic preservation statute that so much work has gone into. And so I just wanted to remind folks that we have the plan to get that passed, and there isn't a roadblock that we run against. We're putting it through the process. And I spoke to Drew, and I understand that we still anticipate it'll be on the books this year. But there's additional steps in the process to go through.
So the ordinance has been reviewed internally, and legal is finishing it up, we believe, this week. And this is more than just the zoning changes that have been recommended by the HPC and the village board had, sent to the zoning board. It's an additional item, so it's packaged with several other code amendments, and they're all going at once. They'll be handed off to the PCCBA this month at their meeting, with the idea that the hearing will take place next month. And then that'll kick it off, and they'll review that and then send their recommendation to you all. And like I said, I think it's reasonable to think they'll get it done before the end of this calendar year.
Thanks.
Awesome, thank you. No more trustee report, thank you. So we're moving on to item number 14. That would be our executive session. May I have a motion to get into closed session for the purpose of discussing a pending litigation pursuant to 5 ILCS 120/2C11 of the Illinois Open Meeting Act, and B, setting a price for sale or lease of real estate property pursuant to 5 ILCS 120/2C6 of the Illinois Open Meeting Act. And that upon the adjournment of a closed session, this regular meeting will be deemed to automatically be adjourned by the same vote without the conduct of any further business.
I make a motion to do all of those things.
I second that motion.
Thank you. It is a roll call.
Trustee Markey?
Aye.
Trustee Ryder?
Aye.
Trustee Inkman?
Aye.
Trustee Fisher?
Aye.
And we are we are adjourned for this open session.